Welcome to Create More Intimacy, a podcast for men. I'm Elisa Stoddard, and I help successful men stop chasing sex and start building real connection so they finally feel close, connected, and wanted again. Let me paint a scene that you might relate to. It's late, the house is quiet, and you climb into bed at the end of another long day, and she's already turning away from you. You stare at the ceiling for a minute and you roll onto your side and look at the outline of her back. And you think about all the things that you handled today, the deadlines, the decisions, and the money that you make for this house, the problems that you solved, all the places that you keep everything running, just like you always do. And somehow you still feel completely invisible. There's a question that starts forming in the back of your mind, and it is so uncomfortable. You do not say it out loud. You barely say it to yourself. And the question is, would she even want me if I stopped providing? That question sits in your chest. It keeps you quiet during dinner and it keeps you up at night. And over time, it starts to build resentment. Not rage necessarily, just this slow, constant bitterness. That feeling of, I do so much for this family and no one's noticing. Why do I feel so unwanted? And it wears on you and it changes the way you look at her. It changes the way you talk to her. It changes what you expect from the marriage even. And the hardest part is that you don't know how to fix it. You have spent your whole adult life doing what you were taught a good husband does. You work really hard, you provide, you handle pressure, and you show up. Yet none of that has created the appreciation or the closeness that you thought you would feel. If this scene hits close to home, you're in the right place. Today, we are talking about the real reasons so many successful men feel unseen in their marriage. You are not broken. You're not failing either. You just were never shown the skills that create emotional closeness. And once you understand what has been missing, everything becomes clearer. Welcome to episode 32, Why Successful Men Feel Unseen in Their Marriage. There is something that happens to a lot of successful men, and it usually starts quietly. You notice the distance between you two. You notice how often she seems tired or irritated with you. You notice how she stops reaching for you. None of it feels dramatic. It's kind of more like a slow drift. And it's taking you further apart just a few inches at a time. And while all of that is happening, something else is happening inside of you. You begin to wonder what she really sees when she looks at you. Does she see the man she married? Or does she see the provider who keeps the finances going? This fear builds quietly. You don't talk about it with your friends. You don't tell your coworkers because you don't even want to admit it to yourself. You have spent so many years doing what you were supposed to do. You worked hard. You stayed responsible. You have shown up with consistency, and you've carried the weight of the family in ways most people never see or appreciate. So the idea that she might not want you without all of that financial part feels almost unbearable. This is where your mind starts to go at night. If I stop providing, would she still care about me? If I lost my job, would she stay? If I slowed down or took a breath, would she still find me valuable? These questions affect you more deeply than you realize. They shape how you interpret every response from her. They make you more reactive to small things. They make you pull away even when you want closeness. They create a sense of pressure that just is constantly present. And here's the most important thing that you need to understand. This fear doesn't mean you're weak or insecure. It means no one ever taught you how to measure your value in your marriage any other way than providing. You were taught to lead through providing. You were taught to protect through responsibility, and you were taught to love through effort. So, of course, you assume that if the providing stopped, the love might disappear too. This fear is common. It's super painful, and it is heavy. But it's also something that can change once you understand where it comes from and what's happening beneath it. There is something important to understand about the role that you have carried for so long. Providing shapes the entire structure of your life. You wake up thinking about what needs to be done, and you plan it and carry it out. You protect, you solve problems, you carry the pressure without needing anyone to acknowledge it. It might be nice. This has become the identity that you've stepped into, and it started when you were a young man because that was the model you likely saw growing up. Maybe you watched your father walk through the door every night with that same exhausted, tired expression. Maybe he said very little, and you know now that you are an adult that he carried a lot. Maybe he believed his job was to work hard and keep the family safe. You learned early that that effort meant love and that responsibility meant strength. You took that blueprint and you built your entire adult life around it. So when the marriage starts to feel strained, you go back to what you know. You work harder, you stay later, you try to make more money, you increase your output, you push through the exhaustion because that's the role you observed and you understand. Unfortunately, this is also where disconnection grows. Your wife is not looking at the hours you work and thinking, oh, he must really love me. She sees the responsibility, but she does not feel the intimacy. She appreciates the stability, but she still feels alone. She is grateful for what you do, yet she does not feel close to you in the way you hoped she would. You start to feel invisible because the one thing you have poured yourself into doesn't create connection. You come home and the house is quiet. You sit near her on the couch and she doesn't lean into you. You reach for her in bed and she turns away. You keep showing up through effort, but the effort doesn't seem to touch her heart. And that creates confusion for you. How can you be doing so much and still feel so unwanted? How can you carry this much weight and still feel so unappreciated? How can you give your entire adult life to your family and still go to bed feeling alone? Here's the truth that changes everything once you understand it. Providing keeps the family functioning. It does not create emotional connection. Those two are very different skill sets even. You mastered the first one because you had to. You were never taught the second one because no one around you modeled it. And this is contributing to why you feel unseen. You are giving everything you know how to give. It's simply not the thing that builds closeness between you two. There is a moment in many marriages when a man realizes something that he does not want to admit. He is doing everything he knows how to do, and yet none of it is creating the response he hoped for. He comes home after a long day expecting warmth or at least acknowledgement, and instead he gets distance. He tries to help more around the house, and the tension still lingers. He reaches for her affection, and she feels guarded or tired or simply unavailable and uninterested. This is where the frustration begins to grow. You tell yourself you shouldn't feel this way. Maybe that you should just accept what is happening. You tell yourself you're overreacting. You tell yourself to stay focused and just keep going. This is the best it's going to be. But under the surface, the disappointment builds. You feel unappreciated. You feel overlooked and you feel misunderstood. And you begin to wonder if anything you do actually matters to her. Many men interpret this moment as failure. They think something's wrong with them or with their wife or wrong with the marriage as a whole, and they assume they are lacking something. They worry they aren't enough. Here's the truth. You did everything you were trained to do. You put your energy into providing. You've taken that very seriously. You put your time into stability for the family. You put your strength into responsibility. The problem is not that you're failing. The problem is that you weren't taught the skills to create the emotional connection part. Emotional connection comes from increasing your emotional capacity and intelligence. It comes from knowing how to listen without defending yourself. It comes from understanding her emotional world instead of jumping directly to solving her problems. It comes from being able to talk about your own feelings in a way that brings you closer rather than pushing her away. It comes from being the steady present that she feels safe opening up to. Guys, this is not about trying harder. Most men have already been trying as hard as they know how. This is about trying something else, something different, something you were never shown, something that reshapes the entire dynamic between you two. When you don't have these skills, you feel unappreciated because you're giving from the wrong place. You are giving effort when the marriage needs presence. You're giving solutions and you want to fix it when the marriage actually needs connection. You're giving stability when the marriage needs emotional openness. Once you understand this, the confusion starts to dissolve. You recognize you're not being rejected. You're being invited to show up differently in the marriage, a way that's very foreign and that you likely haven't ever observed, and certainly nobody taught you. Learning this is what begins to change everything. You may realize that the distance isn't closing, even though you're carrying more and more of the load. This is the stage where some men throw themselves deeper into work, hoping if they just stay later at work, it will quiet the tensions that they feel at home. Others disappear into really time-consuming hobbies because it feels far easier to do that than face the emotional gap that's growing between you and your wife. Both create a sense of motion, but neither is creating connection. What actually needs to shift is harder to see at first. It is not about more effort. It's about a new kind of effort and more awareness. Most successful men are already skilled at reading people and handling stress. My guess is that you use these skills at work regularly. You know how to stay steady when things get complicated. You know how to have direct conversations without losing your footing. You know how to hold space for other people's concerns. These are really valuable skills. You already have them. The challenge is using them at home in a way that respects the partnership rather than creating a hierarchy. Put really simply, you can't treat your wife like she's an employee. Your marriage is not like the chain of command maybe that you experience at the office. These skills translate, but the delivery has to be different. At work, you are a managing structure. At home, you're building emotional safety, and the goal is connection, not control, and certainly not making decisions without her input. When a man begins to understand this difference, things can begin to shift. His tone will shift. His presence steadies the room in a different way. And he listens with curiosity instead of jumping ahead to, yeah, just how can I fix this for you? He communicates in a way that helps her feel understood rather than evaluated. Slowly, the emotional environment between them changes. This is when closeness becomes possible again. This is when conversations can lighten up. This is when tension begins to settle. This is when she feels safer approaching him. Notice that it isn't because he demanded it. That rarely works. And it's not because he performed his way to it. His presence just simply feels different. I want you to know that you don't have to have a complete personality overhaul to see changes here. It does require your intention, though. It requires the awareness that connection is created moment by moment. And it requires the willingness to use the strengths you may already have in a new way. Once you begin to show up with emotional steadiness instead of pressure, your marriage can develop space for connection that wasn't really there before. Appreciation grows out of that more naturally. Communication can get easier. You'll feel more grounded at home, and she'll feel more open with you around. Let me share a story that reflects what many men tell me once they finally open up. A client came to me feeling completely worn down. He is successful in every measurable way. He provided well and he showed up for his kids. He handled every crisis quietly, so no one else had to. From the outside, he looked steady and reliable. Inside, he felt invisible. He described coming home after long days and sensing the tension before he even was halfway through the door. His wife seemed distant, and conversations were really strained and stayed very surface level. Evenings were hard. They often fell flat, and the physical intimacy had become very rare and honestly confusing. He kept thinking, what am I missing here? So he tried increasing his effort. He did more to help her out. He worked more to earn more. He planned some things, more giving, more trying to change the dynamic between them. But nothing really landed. And the more disconnected he felt, the more he escaped into work. It was the one place that he felt competent, the one place he felt respected, and the one place that the people around him appreciated him and responded to him. At home, he felt like a background character in his own life. The turning point came when one night he said something that he had never said out loud. And that was, I do not know if she would want me if I stopped bringing in the money. And that was a really huge admission. He was carrying the fear that had been shaping this marriage for years. He didn't realize it, but this fear kept him quiet and small, kept him guarded. We worked together and he began to understand something that changed everything for him. And I want all of you to hear this. His wife wasn't distant because he was failing. She was distant because there was no emotional space or connection between them. She did not feel connected to him. She did not feel understood. She didn't feel safe sharing her inner world because every conversation turned into him trying to problem solve, or he would just withdraw. He was giving from responsibility, but not from connection. He was showing up through effort instead of his presence. What moved things forward for them wasn't a dramatic overhaul per se. It was the way he began showing up in the small moments. He stopped rushing past her feelings. He let conversations sit and breathe a bit. He allowed himself to be present instead of guarded. And he did a lot less defending himself. He started to see that her words weren't all criticisms toward him. these tiny shifts created a sense of ease between them that had been missing for years. And she responded to that ease in ways that really surprised him. This really changed his feelings of invisibility, and the connection started to rebuild. For the first time in years, he felt valued for who he was, not what he provided. This is the part that many men resist at first. They want things to feel different at home, and yet they hope the shift will come from their wife changing her behavior. They want more warmth and more affection and appreciation and openness from her. Those things can happen, they truly can, but they grow from a foundation where you have far more influence than you realize. This is where your role becomes powerful. It isn't through pressure. You can't force this. It is through learning some new skills, showing up differently, and just being more present. You set the tone in more ways than you might think. The emotional climate of a marriage often follows the steadiness of the person who is willing to lead with awareness. When you walk into a room grounded and open, the energy shifts. You have observed that. When you communicate without defensiveness, conversations stay safer. When you listen before reacting, conflicts lose their heat. And these are just small things, yet they have tremendous impact on how your wife experiences conversations and things that could connect you two. This work starts with you because you're the one who can take the first step without waiting for permission or waiting for her. You can change the way you respond. You can slow down the tension that rises in your chest. You can guide the conversation in a steady direction. You can bring emotional clarity into moments that used to spiral. This requires you learn new emotionally intelligent skills. These are leadership skills in the truest sense. They are not about control. They are about creating space where connection becomes possible again. And here's what most men don't realize. Once you begin showing up this way, the marriage adapts in a really positive way. Your wife may feel safer. You may feel more understood. And the distance stops growing and starts easing a bit. You begin to see how much influence you actually have. Now, I want you to know this doesn't mean that you're carrying the entire relationship. It does mean you step into the part that is yours with intention. You build the foundation that allows both of you to show up differently. You have the capacity for this. You have the emotional strength for this. And once you learn the skills, your marriage becomes a place where you feel valued again instead of overlooked. This is the doorway into the kind of connection you have been missing, and you are capable of opening it. If what you heard today feels eerily familiar, take that as a sign that nothing is wrong with you. You have been doing the job you were taught to do, and now you're just learning there's another layer to this that changes everything about how connection is created. You don't have to keep guessing, and you don't have to keep trying stuff that backfires. You do not have to carry the worry that she wouldn't want you without the money you provide. You can learn how to build a marriage where you feel valued for who you are and where she feels safe coming closer again. This is the work I do with men every day. We look at what is really happening inside the marriage, where your disconnection began, and what specific skills will actually move things forward for you and for the marriage. The clarity that comes from this conversation alone can lift a weight that you have been carrying around for years. If you're ready to stop feeling unseen and start creating a marriage where connection feels possible again, schedule a relationship clarity call with me. You will walk away knowing exactly what's going on and what to do next. You do deserve a marriage that feels steady and connected, and you deserve to feel valued at home. I'll talk to you again next week. Take care. Thanks for being here. If something in this episode hit home, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more men find the support they need. And if you are ready to get help or take the next step, you'll find the link to book a free call in the show notes. I'll see you next time.